Winter Hill, USA. It's the kind of place you drive past on a cross-country trip and forget within minutes. A small town tucked between rolling farmland and thick forests. Its streets are quiet, its shops half empty, its sidewalks cracked from years of neglect. But above it all, sitting like a sentinel, is Winter Hill Hospital. Locals point to it immediately when you ask about the town. Some with pride. That hospital kept this place alive. Others with unease. It should have shut down a long time ago, because Winter Hill Hospital is no ordinary building. It's a place that carries both life and death in its bones. The hospital first opened in 1928. Back then, it was considered cutting edge for a rural community. 4 floors, long corridors of white-tiled walls, and a basement designed as a fallout shelter during the Cold War. Generations of families came here to deliver children, recover from injuries, and say final goodbyes to loved ones. But like so many small-town hospitals in America, Winter Hill struggled to keep up. By the 1980s, funding had dwindled. Paint peeled from the walls. Outdated equipment was patched with tape and prayer, yet it never closed. Doctors whispered about its resilience. Locals called it stubborn. And then there were the whispers. Every hospital has its ghost stories, but Winter Hills are different. Patients began reporting strange sounds in the quiet hours. Not the hum of machines or the shuffle of nurses' shoes, but voices. Soft, deliberate voices. They came from the corners of the room. They sounded like someone was standing right behind me. Sometimes they called my name. At first, the staff brushed it off. Delirium. Medication side effects. The imagination of lonely patients staring at shadows on the wall. But then, the security cameras started catching things no one could explain. Monitors flickering on with empty hallways. Shapes gliding past doors. Equipment rolling out of rooms with no one pushing it. And still, the hospital remained open. In the early 1990s, Winter Hill Hospital expanded. A new wing was built for long-term care, with rooms meant for patients who would never leave. It was in that wing that the whispers grew louder. Nurses on overnight shifts reported feeling watched. Lights clicked on in rooms with no patients. Wheelchairs rolled out of closets in the dead of night. Some of the staff quit. Others stayed, too tied to the town to leave. But all of them agreed on one thing. Winter Hill Hospital had a presence. When you stand outside on a stormy evening, the building looms against the sky like a dark crown. Locals swear the hospital seems bigger at night, its windows watching, its halls stretching longer than they should. And yet, despite its age, despite its reputation, people still go there. Because in Winter Hill, there's no other choice. But the real horror of Winter Hill isn't in its history or even its strange architecture. It's in what happens when the sun goes down. Because at night, the whispers return. And if you ask anyone in town, they'll tell you the same thing. The hospital doesn't just heal the sick, it keeps the dead close. And sometimes, it lets them speak. By the time night falls in Winter Hill, the hospital is more than a building. It's a story. A story told in whispers over dinner tables, at gas stations, even in church pews. They say the hospital listens, a cashier told me once. You can talk in your room, and it'll answer. Locals claim that patients hear voices calling them by name. Not friendly voices, harsh, insistent, sometimes pleading. sometimes angry. One nurse, who requested her name remain anonymous, told me about a night in 2005. I was making my rounds on the second floor. It was dead quiet, except for this voice. At first, I thought it was a patient mumbling in their sleep, but the room was empty. The bed hadn't been used in weeks, and it said my name, slowly, like it was savoring it. She left her post that night. She never returned. Stories like hers are common in Winter Hill. Not everyone believes them, but almost everyone respects them. Boom. Cameras in the hospital corridors tell a chilling story. Security footage from the 1990s shows hallways empty of staff, yet wheelchairs move on their own. Doors open slowly, then slam shut. Shadows appear, shift, and vanish before anyone can investigate. One clip, still shown to new nurses, reveals a figure standing in a room, tall, thin, motionless. The camera zooms in. Nothing human matches its shape. Then, a door swings open behind it, and the figure is gone. Locals call that room the watching room. Even patients report strange sensations. Some say it's the temperature dropping suddenly. Others speak of cold hands brushing their arms, or the unmistakable smell of antiseptic mixed with decay lingering even when cleaning staff have long gone. There's a particular story that repeats in almost every retelling. A man named Harold, recovering from surgery in 1998, told staff he saw someone standing at the foot of his bed every night. He described it as a woman in a white gown, pale and silent, with eyes that seemed endless. After a week, Harold's vital signs plummeted. He was found alone in his room, awake but whispering, eyes wide with terror. Nurses claim he spoke a single sentence over and over. "They're talking to me. They want me to go." He recovered physically, but he never returned to Winter Hill. "I saw something once," an old man said, voice shaking. "I was delivering supplies to the hospital. At the top of the stairs, I saw her. A nurse, I think, but she wasn't right. Her eyes, they were black, and she just stared at me, then vanished." Stories like these are everywhere. The longer someone spends in Winter Hill, the more likely they are to witness something unexplained. Even children notice. A girl who grew up in the town told her parents about a lady standing at the window of the old wing, always watching, always silent. When her mother approached, the figure was gone, leaving only a chill and the faint smell of flowers that had long since died. Employees often talk about the whispers like it's a natural part of the job. "Some nights, it's worse," one janitor said. "You're mopping the floor, and you hear a hallway full of voices. They're not talking to you at first, but then sometimes they do. It isn't just voices. Cold spots, objects moving, lights flickering without cause. It's the consistency that unnerves people." Even local legends link the hospital to old Native American tales about restless spirits inhabiting places of suffering. Some claim the hospital was built atop land once used for burial ceremonies. Others say that the cold stone corridors absorb the fear and grief of those inside, replaying it to anyone sensitive enough to notice. Then there are the visitors who see things the staff can't. A young woman, recovering from a minor surgery, said she woke up one night to the sound of whispering voices. She followed them, walking down empty corridors. At the end, she saw a shadow hunched over a bed, moving as if tending to someone who wasn't there. She left Winter Hill the next morning and never returned. Security footage seems to confirm some of these accounts. Hallways recorded as empty reveal movement in post-production. Figures appear and vanish. Doors open without hands. Shadows shift. No explanation ever fits. Locals agree on one thing. Winter Hill Hospital isn't just haunted. It's listening. And if you listen too long, it might speak to you. The whispers are no longer just rumors. They're reaching out, and the next act will bring a first-hand account. I was never meant to be here. I had come to Winter Hill for research, hoping to collect stories for a small documentary about abandoned or haunted hospitals in America. The town welcomed me politely enough, but the locals' warnings were persistent. "Don't stay past midnight," one nurse said. "Some things don't like being watched." I smiled nervously. Didn't believe her. And yet, the hospital had a way of changing your mind before you even stepped inside. I entered the old wing just as the sun disappeared behind the hills. The air smelled of antiseptic, dust, and something faintly metallic, like iron and decay mixed together. The hallways stretched far beyond what I expected. Each corridor felt longer than the last, and shadows clung to the corners like they were alive. I shook my head. Probably my imagination. The first sign that this place was different came in the security room. I was reviewing archived footage from overnight shifts when I saw it. A figure standing at the end of a hallway. Empty hall. No staff. No patients. Just standing there. It didn't move at first, but then the head tilted, as if it was studying the camera. The hair on my arms stood up. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was a trick of the shadows, but the footage continued. The figure vanished, then reappeared near a wheelchair that rolled slowly, without anyone pushing it. I felt my hands shake. Later, I decided to walk the corridors myself. It was after midnight. The hospital was silent, except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights and my own heartbeat. The air was cold, too cold for a building heated all day. My breath fogged in front of me. Then I heard it, a whisper, my name, clear, soft, familiar. "Alex, Alex, why are you here?" I froze. No one else was supposed to be here. My recorder was in my hand. My flashlight cut across the empty hallway. But I wasn't alone. I followed the sound, step by step, down hallways that seemed to twist and stretch unnaturally. At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar. I pushed it gently. Inside, a small patient room. Empty, bed neatly made. But on the wall, something written in condensation. "Leave now." My pulse spiked. I stumbled backward, and the door slammed shut behind me. Hard. I ran. No, I didn't just walk. I ran down the stairwell. Then I saw her, a figure in white, at the bottom of the stairs. Long hair covering her face. Motionless. Watching. I froze. Then she lifted her head. Eyes black. Empty. Endless. A cold, paralyzing dread gripped me. "Why are you here?" her voice whispered. 100 voices in one, echoing through the stairwell. I turned and ran down the hallway. Doors opened and slammed shut, in rhythm with my racing heart. Shadows stretched and twisted like smoke. I reached the end of a corridor and saw it, the watching room. A hospital bed sat in the middle of the floor, sheets rumpled, though no one had slept there in years. And on the bed, someone was lying. No, something. It rose slowly. No face, no eyes, just a void where features should be. It whispered my name, closer now, insistent, hungry. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. It reached out and then vanished. The room was empty again. I don't remember how I got outside, but I did, soaked, trembling, heart hammering, my recorder still clutched in my hand. I played back the footage the next day. Half the whispers had been recorded. My name, repeated over and over. And one unmistakable phrase, "Stay with us." I never went back into that wing, but I couldn't forget what I saw. Because Winter Hill Hospital doesn't just haunt its patients. It haunts anyone who dares to witness it. The next night, the hospital's hold only grew stronger. The climax was yet to come. The next night, I couldn't stay away. Curiosity had me by the throat. Every warning I'd heard, every whisper, every shadow demanded respect. And yet, I returned. This time, I wasn't just observing. I was going to face it. I arrived at the main entrance, unlocked the doors using a janitor's key I'd borrowed, and stepped into the stale, cold air of the hospital. The hospital was alive in a way I hadn't understood before. The air vibrated. I could feel it. A low hum, almost like 1,000 whispered voices layered together. Alex, Alex, they called my name. I told myself to stay calm, to document, to move carefully. But the corridors didn't behave as I remembered. Doors seemed to shift positions. Hallways stretched. Shadows clung to walls. My flashlight flickered violently, illuminating shapes that weren't there a moment before. I approached the watching room. Inside, the bed lay empty, or so it seemed. Then I saw them, figures, hundreds of them, shadowed shapes hunched over beds, peering from corners. Their eyes, black voids that reflected nothing. And then they moved, slowly at first, like smoke curling across the floor. Then faster, swirling, surrounding me, whispering, screaming, demanding. I tried to move, but the floor felt sticky, alive. The shadows twisted around my legs. My flashlight fell. The battery died. Darkness swallowed me. I fell to my knees, terrified, but unable to flee. A figure separated from the mass. A nurse, tall, white gown torn, hair plastered to her face. She didn't speak, not with words, but I felt her thoughts. "Why are you here?" I tried to answer, but no sound came. The other figures advanced, circling me. My fear intensified. My mind screamed. Suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. Absolute. The shadows froze. The air was still. I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder. I spun around. Empty. I scrambled to the stairwell, desperate for an exit, and then I saw her again. The figure from Act 3, the woman with black, endless eyes. She didn't move, she didn't speak, she only stared. And yet, I heard her voice inside my head. "You belong here." I felt my body lock. My heart slowed unnaturally. My surroundings warped. The stairwell stretched, elongated, impossible angles. I could no longer tell up from down. Then a sudden violent tug. I was pulled, not physically, but mentally, toward the watching room. I screamed, tried to resist, tried to fight, but the hospital had me. Every fear, every doubt, every whispered warning from locals, it was real, and I was caught in the epicenter. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I was lying on the bed, alone, the room empty, the shadows gone. But something had changed. I could feel them, the hospital's presence, watching me, waiting, patiently. I tried to leave. I ran to the main corridor, the exit doors. They slammed shut. No amount of force could open them. Panic rose. I pounded on the doors, shouted, but the hospital, it did not answer. I looked around for an alternative exit. There was none. Every window, every door, every corridor seemed to loop back, guiding me silently toward the watching room. It became clear I wasn't here by accident. The hospital had chosen me. I felt a whisper behind me. You wanted to see. Now you belong. I stumbled backward into the stairwell. Something cold brushed past my face. A voice, urgent and pleading, whispered, "Don't stay. Don't let them take you." Then, silence. The lights flickered. The hallway was empty. My pulse racing, my breath ragged. I didn't wait. I ran. I didn't look back. Even after escaping, the presence followed me. The hospital's influence lingered, like a cold shadow over my soul. And I knew the story was far from over. I left Winter Hill Hospital at dawn. The rain had stopped. The streets glistened under a weak sun. Normalcy seemed to return. But I knew better. The hospital didn't release me. Not really. Not entirely. Driving away, I replayed every detail. The shadows, the whispers, the watching room, the figures with black, endless eyes. They weren't hallucinations. At least, not fully. I could still feel their presence in my mind. Flickers at the edges of my vision. Faint murmurs when the world was quiet. Winter Hill Hospital had left a mark on me. Permanent. A return to the town briefly, trying to understand. Locals were cautious, polite, but wary. They told me stories I hadn't heard before. A night janitor vanished in 1978. Security footage showed him walking down a hallway and disappearing into a wall. A young patient reportedly screamed for days, insisting she saw someone watching her from the ceiling. She never recovered her mental stability. Even staff, who stayed for decades, admitted strange things. Elevators move in on their own, whispered conversations when the building was empty, and shadows that seemed to anticipate human movement. Winter Hill Hospital wasn't just a building. It was a living entity. I asked why this happened. Why the whispers, the shadows, the strange occurrences? Theories abound. Some locals believe the hospital sits atop sacred or cursed land. Old Native American burial sites, unmarked graves, or long-forgotten tragedy. Others claim it absorbs the fear, pain, and grief of every person inside, replaying it for anyone sensitive enough to notice. And a few quietly say the hospital chooses who it wants to trap, not with malice, but with necessity. Even today, Those who work at Winter Hill notice subtle changes. Lights flicker unexpectedly, cameras pick up movement where no one is. Patients report voices calling their names. No one outside the town believes them. But inside Winter Hill, everyone knows. The hospital doesn't just exist, it listens, it watches, and sometimes it speaks. I never returned inside the old wing, but the stories remain, and the hospital waits for the next visitor, the next patient, the next curious soul who wants to see what lies in the shadows of Winter Hill. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night and think I hear whispers, a faint voice, barely audible, calling my name. I tell myself it's a dream, a memory, but the fear, it feels real because I know the hospital remembers me, and it will always be waiting. Winter Hill Hospital isn't just a place, it's a living nightmare. It's a reminder that some buildings carry the weight of everyone who ever suffered inside them, and some buildings never let go. If you think this was unsettling, you haven't heard the worst of them. Subscribe and step deeper into the shadows.